Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Waldman. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Tuesday, October 10th, 2017. Time for another show. It's live this time. We were off yesterday for Canadian Thanksgiving, as you know. And, well, we provided you with a taped show, although I got to tell you, I mentioned it yesterday in the show. If you listen to it, I don't know. I feel almost ripped off. It was a good piece the BuzzFeed News guys put together, but I don't know if I should have spent as much time on it as I did. But it's hard to anticipate what you're going to want to spend time on in a taped show ahead of time. We know what we can focus on today. I guess Donald Trump going crazy. He's having a Twitter rampage this morning. And what can you do? You just got to wait for the guy to either drop dead or for America to realize he ought to be impeached or imprisoned or institutionalized or whatever. Those are your options, pretty much. That's all we can really discuss on the air. Anyway, Daily Co's Radio is live now. Bill knows, all the way in Portland, Maine, because our radio signal reaches up there. Of course, he was really just anticipating our radio signal reaching him. It's all a setup, just like Mike Pence. Daily Co's Radio is live now. Kagro X flies to L.A., then flies back to Virginia to walk out of his own radio show. That's an excellent idea. I ought to do that. Alert, I forgot to silence the phone. We'll take care of that during our first station identification break in about 26 minutes from now. A little less, in fact. Yes, shall we catch up on it? Shall we go with the Donald Trump is a dangerous loose cannon, imbecilic moron, dangerously demented? Which direction should we go today? So far, I don't know, man. He's yelling at the TV is what's going on. They've documented this nicely. Matthew Gertz is on top of this one. Let's trace it all the way back. Oh, my goodness. He's gone all the way back this morning. And in case we need any updating, Matthew Gertz is a senior fellow at Media Matters. And you know that matters because it's in the name. Gonna see if I can plot Trump's tweets this morning against episode of Fox and Friends that aired at the same time. And it's worth doing in case you want to know, where is Trump's brain? Honestly, I mean, I added that. That wasn't what Matthew Gertz was saying. That's the implied message here. Where's Trump's brain this morning? What makes him tick? How much longer will he tick? Do we have to wait any longer till the ticker gets finally plugged? As I've done before on Twitter, I wait each morning, hoping that the divine Twinkie of justice will one day lodge itself in his aorta and rid us all of this nightmare. Yeah, Mike Pence would be a disaster too. I'm willing to try it, okay? What can I tell you? I'll hold it against me, all right? It's fine. 6:10 a.m., Matthew Gertz reports, Earhart, I guess one of the, I don't know, all the Fox and Friends hosts. I know a few of the names from repetition. Earhart, don't take a knee during the national anthem. Too many people have died for this country. 6:13 a.m., Real Donald Trump tweets, why is the NFL getting massive tax breaks while at the same time disrespecting our capital A anthem, capital F flag, and capital C country? Change tax law, which, of course, as many people have pointed out, used to be an outrage whenever conservatives thought they were being targeted by the misuse or misguided, targeted application of the tax law. But he's going to change the tax law like that because he's got so many things done as president of the United States. He's super awesome at that. Matthew continues, 6:02 a.m., Kilmeade, I know he's one of the hosts on Fox and Friends, on immigration, quote, it looks like Nancy Pelosi doesn't understand compromise, unquote. 6:18 a.m. This is how long it takes Trump to get his fat thumbs to type any of these things out, I guess. The problem with agreeing to a policy on immigration, I guess I should go over to The Voice, is that Democrats don't want secure borders. They don't care about safety for you, period, S, period. period. That's USA. So there, Donald Trump tells us, just 16 minutes later. Matthew Gertz continues here. No health care coverage, but 2 ads for health insurance companies before 6:30 a.m. prompts Donald's next tweet. Since Congress can't get its act together on health care, one word, capital C, I will be using the power of the pen to give great health care, one word, capital H, capital C, to many people. Fast. Capital letters and fast. Since Congress can't get its act together on health care, I will be using the power of the pen to give great health care to many people fast. That's really, holy mackerel. Kate Sherrill just wants us to know she died. Not the same way I was thinking about for Donald Trump, but I guess she likes the divine Twinkie of justice. Honestly, when is it? I would settle for a chocodile at this point. Anything, please. Plug this man's major blood vessels. I'm sure it's happening. All we got to do is, I think Bill pointed this out this morning, early in the morning, or maybe it was last night's tweets that show up in the morning. In case I missed it, I kind of like that feature on Twitter, I think I have to admit, to that one. But, what we got to do is keep feeding him steak with some high sodium ketchup, by the way, and all the ice cream he can eat, and make sure he's sedentary and agitated by the television as much as possible. It'll happen, and we'll all be glad for it when it does. Though, it'll be interesting. When he finally drops dead, should he drop dead in office, I guess the television stations will, in a normal situation, you start, talking about what a wonderful guy he was. He was a big hero, and everyone loved him. But, I don't know. Can they get away with it on this one? No one will believe it. Anyway, let's see. There's more here. He's still motivated by the television, according to Matthew Gertz, and I believe Matthew. 6:05 a.m., Fox and Friends discusses the Jemele Hill suspension. 6:42 a.m. That takes a long time for him to get around to that, I guess. I don't know. He goes and has some... Does he drink coffee? He eats his breakfast, comes back around with Jemele Hill at the mic. It is no wonder. It is no wonder. ESPN ratings have, quote, he uses quote marks, tanked. In fact, tanked so badly is the talk of the industry. Now, I have my doubts about this one. It's very Trump. That's true. But it's correctly punctuated. That I wonder about. It took a long time, almost 40 minutes for him to get this one out. But he punctuated it correctly with the comma inside the quote marks and everything. So, I don't know. That one's a little bit suspect, just for that reason. Let's see. There's more. 7:45 a.m. Fox and Friends interviews Bedford on his book. This is definitely straight out for the TV. By 8:13, I do wonder about what makes for the delays. I assume they're talking president and stuff, and he gets distracted. And that's, okay. Well, anyway, so 7:45 a.m., they interview Bedford on his book. 8:13 a.m., highly respected author Christopher Bedford just came out with book, The Art of the Donald, Lessons from America's something. He can't fit the rest of it in there because they won't give him the 280 characters. Really good book. There's no chance in the world he read the thing. I don't even know if it's available to be read at this point, but he doesn't read anything. Really good book. It's about me. So there you go. By the way, I do note for the record that Bedford, I did see some stills of his interview. He's talking about learning lessons from Donald Trump, and he has learned to make the Donald Trump vagina hands that he does when he doesn't know what to do with his hands, and he forms that weird looking, I don't know what, formation with his hands. It's an odd thing. It happens all the time. Donald Trump, he really does. He can't help himself from doing it. And I guess Bedford picked that up. Let's see. Gertz continues here. Kind of hard to track since Trump TiVos. That's it. Trump TiVos the show and can fast forward. But yeah, he's watching Fox and Friends and tweeting. Now I get it. Okay. Well, they interrupt him with snacks and stuff. So he pauses it, and then it takes him a half hour to get back to the show. Okay, so today's Fox and Friends tweets part 1. He puts together screen grabs from Fox and Friends and pairs them with screen grabs of the tweets that were inspired by that portion of the show. I think that's a great service. Is there anything more? I saw all 4 of them earlier today. Reminder, by the way, he says the hosts of Fox and Friends are bigoted morons. That is true, and he attaches some proof by way of a link to Media Matters writing about it. Bigotry and idiocy, Donald Trump's favorite news show. Incidentally, next tweet, here's a Fox and Friends segment that ran this morning that Trump did not tweet about. What is it? One-on-one with Ivana Trump. Yeah, she's making the rounds these days and getting in a fight with Melania, apparently. Here's part of the exchange he records for us. Who is who here? E. I don't know who is E. Who is the interviewer? I don't know. Well, one of her initials is E. Why did you get divorced? Ivana says, he was unfaithful. Can't trust him. With Marla Maples? I'm not going to talk about Showgirl. Well, it's hot out there, ladies and gentlemen. And, what else can we move on to? Let's see, lots of comments, I guess. We lit up the, what substitutes for phone lines here on the show. Rochester, I know you've always been interested in having some call-in phone lines. I will remind you, Twitter is our nearest thing to a phone line that we can afford on our super limited budget. Rochester radio station, Rochester Free Radio, of course, has phone lines. They got a bigger budget than we do. But we're producing the show from Virginia and doing it solo at that. But if you'd like, give it a shot. Twitter, use the KITM hashtag to make sure that your comments linger for long enough for me to pick up on them. Makes it a lot easier for me to sort them out from the various the rest of the chatter that I create on Twitter for myself by laughing at Donald Trump and everything he does too many times in the morning. Let's see. We have other comments to catch up with. Let's see. Rebecca Romans is laughing about Trump wanting an IQ test face-off with Tillerson. It's, our tweeter here, Wes Smith 123 says, finally, I'm going to get rich. I'm all in on Tillerson. Yeah, so what's the story, man? Tillerson says Trump is a effing moron, and he's right about that. Trump is mad because he's right to be mad. Somebody has called him an effing moron. I'd be mad too. But he wants to take an IQ test. Once again, Donald Trump living in, I don't know what decade, the 70s, the 80s. Nobody talks about IQ tests anymore. But I get the feeling that maybe while he was at the New York Military Academy, they might have given him an IQ test. And I guess he scored admirably. And I'm sure that was the case back in the day. Of course, his mental acuity has fallen off the cliff since, I don't know, 1995 or so. He's just been on a downward slope. Now, of course, he's a total wreck. But he remembers, I think, one day, back in the day, he had a good IQ test, which, I mean, in the intervening decades, we've learned that they mean very, very little. But that's what he's been clinging to. In his glory days, he had a good IQ test. I don't know how he's going to do now, but he wants to have an IQ face-off with Tillerson. Not going to happen, obviously. But if it did, I don't know what we'd learn. What the real test is, though, is we got to have a neurologist tell us whether this guy's neurons are firing or not. Is this guy in cognitive decline? Yes or no? Please tell us definitively. Maybe that's not possible. Michael Musson has a comment here. Reminder to Trump, taking a knee was recommended by troops as the way to protest and respect the flag. That is absolutely true. And we reminded everybody of that as well. As we read it on Twitter, so we know it's true. I don't know if it's true. I mean, it certainly has the ring of truth, and lots of people are tweeting it as though it were true. I don't know if I've ever read a article about, an interview about Kaepernick speaking with this Green Beret. I just saw notes about it on Twitter, and it may have had some links to some articles about it, but I don't think we read them on the air. Anyway, what else have we got here? Rebecca sends us this one. Can we has irony now? Impeach Donald Trump Twitter account tweeting what? DeVos defends Trump by saying, would a moron hire me? Oh, that's not going to work, although. I think she just answered the question and insulted herself all at once. Great self-own. Excellent done. Excellently done. Do people say that? Excellently? I don't think so. The Warlock. The Warlock is back. Warlock 477. How about an Oreo? You mean by way of... I could see him trying to swallow an Oreo sideways, unchewed. I don't know how well he chews with those dentures. I assume those are dentures. Those gigantic teeth that get in the way of everything he wants. A big part of his speech pattern. I want you to know I open my lips this wide when I speak because in order to get words out, to get my lips around these gigantic choppers takes a lot of effort. Okay? I just want you to know that's why I speak the way I do. You can try it at home. You'll be able to do a key part of any good Donald Trump impression is making sure your lips clear your teeth. You got to set your jaw tight, right? Bring it in close, and then pull the lips up. Make sure your teeth get exposed. You pay a lot for these dentures, and you want everyone to see them. I don't know why he didn't go with the solid gold teeth. Anyway, how about an Oreo? Sure, it could work. Just as well as a Twinkie. I think I'm thinking about foods that he swallows whole that I think could somehow, I don't know how it would get into his bloodstream, just direct. I think there's a whole Twinkie actually just floating through his blood vessels somewhere. I don't know if he likes Twinkies or not. Could be a Cheeto, could be an Oreo. I'm sure it's really just going to be a big gristly wad of steak. This is the best gristle. I love the way so who knows? It may be that the ketchup slicks it enough to slide through without blockage. What else have we got? Parlio. Hi. How are things going in Catalonia these days? Are there any progressive-owned junk food companies that can saturate Fox's ad slots with their most artery-busting wares? I'm sure... I don't know. They're progressive owned. We could get together and buy it. That's something for me to do. My wife continuously reminds me that eventually I'm going to have to decide what I want to do when I grow up. The radio show might not make it as a sustaining venture. Maybe I could get a Kickstarter together or a GoFundMe, and we could buy some sort of terrible junk food. What do you think would do it? That Trump would eat? Gummy bears, Cheetos, Oreos. I mean, he swore off the Oreos because they moved their production to Mexico at some point. Isn't that the case? I don't know. Fried chicken. I know he loves Kentucky Fried Chicken. That's a tall order to buy a whole fried chicken franchise, though. But maybe we can switch him over. Let's see. Kate also is asking, is Trump planning a trip to the DMZ? Is he? Sarah Kenzior, I guess, thinks so. This is an extremely dangerous idea. That no one is holding him back is another very bad sign. Apparently, Bloomberg reporting this. There's some excerpts. Let's take a look. U.S. President Donald Trump may travel to the demilitarized zone separating the two Koreas. Oh, man. Do it. It is dangerous. You're right. As part of his first visit to South Korea in November, Yonhap News reported Tuesday, citing an unidentified military official. Captain Crunch, I believe, was the guy who said so. Trump is expected to send a significant message to North Korea, either I'm sorry, I'm reading ahead, either verbally, which is how most people send messages, or kinetically during the trip. And I'll tell you, I'm laughing because I'm thinking, literally, as I'm reading this, Trump is expected to send a significant message, and I am thinking of Trump like literally mooning North Korea from South Korea. And then trying to make a joke. Look, it's Reverend Moon, everybody. Dropping. Oh, my God, what a horrible sight. He's pretty much mooned America from that picture we have of him playing tennis in his, translucent tennis shorts. But, okay, well, kinetically, what is that even? I don't know. Is that a poor translation? That's Yonhap News. It says either verbally or kinetically, Yonhap said, without elaborating on what that may mean. He could throw something, he could spit, he could piss from a raised platform. Oh, you know what? That's probably not a good idea. Do we want to leave him exposed up there? Well, he doesn't mind. He's making a gesture of urinating. I know. I don't mean exposing his private parts. I mean, if he gets up on a platform, like, I guess the question here is, how long would it take him to, to get a stream going? It's an elderly gentleman, I mean, is this something he can do? Can we put him up on a platform and can he reliably piss towards North Korea and, snap, chop, guy, get it done, get out of the way, particularly if, when's he visiting? November, it could be chilly, I mean, there's health concerns, but also just standing up there on a platform exposed, you'll get shot. So, if he can do it and get it moving quickly, we can consider it. Kinetically. I don't really know what that's supposed to mean. He's going to throw give me a hand grenade. Just seriously, give me one. I can throw it all the way to. All right. A visit to the DMZ would fit Trump's appetite for high theatrics. That's certainly true. Oh, this guy's name is Bong Young-shik, a researcher at Yonsei University's Institute for North Korean Studies in Seoul. The image of him narrowing his I can feel it too. His image of him narrowing his eyes to stare across the DMZ. I'm even reading this in his voice. It is tweeting by another means, Bong said. He's going to be a popular guy in the United States, Bong. Mr. Trump may also think that if it provokes Pyongyang, all the better. Probably true. Yeah, he'll probably get up on a platform and give him a steely gaze or something. And I don't know what kind of kinetic demonstration options we have available, but I do believe that you could talk him into getting. So, Mr. President, what if you get up there and you make a Reverend Moon joke? And that's terrific. That's great. I can't wait. I'm still a little bit far behind on the comments, but good comments today, everybody. Athena says, I'm sure if 45 dies in office, he's going to have Ivanka announce the ratings of his funeral. That could certainly be true. Rebecca says, I think Trump's teeth are veneers. That could be. Yeah. That could certainly be the case, rather than dentures. I don't know. I guess he's so awkward with his teeth that they look and feel like dentures, but yeah, it could just be that, he's got veneers on there and they're just a little bit too large for the mouth and they cause this. I don't know if we could find out how long ago he would have had that, because it wasn't part of his speech pattern when he was younger. When he had his wits about him, and for one thing, he also just was better spoken at the time. But he was a little bit more of he wasn't a loud speaker, and he was a little bit more of not a mumbler per se, but he made sort of low key comments and wry comments, and he was just sharper, but he also, he kept his mouth, he didn't keep his mouth shut, obviously, but it was just, like physically, his mouth was tighter, and he didn't have to, stretch his lips over his teeth all the time. All right, what else? Michael says Trump doesn't check his neurons. He makes sure all the morons are firing in his brain. That could certainly be the case. And one other comment from Michael. Did a U.S. veteran influence Kaepernick's take a knee protest of police brutality? I got he's sending me the Snopes story on it. That'll remove all doubt. I guess we're supposed to, generally speaking, I can accept it when Snopes says something is true, not true, partially true. Sometimes I think they blur the lines a little bit, but we'll find out whether it's created from whole cloth, and I think I can trust that. And I believe it's in my mailbox here because it's true. But let's take a look. Green Beret and NFL player Nate Boyer confirmed he convinced, yes, we did hear his name. Did we read that he convinced? All right, well, okay. He convinced the quarterback to take a knee rather than sit during the national anthem. We all know the story. It is rated as true here on Snopes, and that's pretty much what we need to know here. Thanks, Michael, for helping out behind the scenes with some production assistance doing our fact checking. Susan Hurley says, I've heard the military use the term kinetic to refer to using bombs in a shooting war. That's true. Remember a kinetic action that was threatened against Libya during the Obama administration. I have heard that. It did ring that bell for me, but I don't know whether they meant that this way or not. And this was a Korean source, so I'm not 100% sure. Who knows what any of his stuff means, right? I mean, we're all puzzled by that. But thank you for bringing that up. That's a good point and a scary one, and it ought to be considered, since that could absolutely be the case of what Trump's got in mind. All right, many other stories to round up. I don't know whether I so many things I will have in pocket, and many of the things just sort of passed quickly in Twitter. I should just I should open up a page. I should open up my regular Twitter page and make sure that we hit all the highlights of what's happened this morning, as measured by did I feel like it was worth making a snide comment or joke about. That's the way I basically measure my entire day. Okay. Well, we're coming up on we made it all the way to the first break, just talking about Trump and his crazy tweets and reading your equally crazy tweets. Everybody, thanks for perking up the show a little bit. And now I can go and silence the phone and take care of stuff and make sure that we're in good shape for rolling out the second segment of the show. We are continuing, of course, today. Yesterday you would have heard, I think we were up to part 6 of Paula Appanese and her continuing series of GOP as domestic abusers. We will be bringing you parts 7 and hopefully squeezing in part 8 tomorrow. It's a little difficult sometimes to squeeze it in on a Wednesday, but I think we can make it work. And then we'll run through the weekend's news and try and catch up. And wow, Donald Trump's nuts. Hey, we'll talk about that more after the break. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We were a little bit behind on starting our music, so we might want to fade this down rather than wait for it to run out this time. Okay, I didn't want to alarm anybody in heading into the break. We're not going to spend the next hour talking about Donald Trump's nuts. That's not what I meant. I mean, I'm just saying he's crazy. You know what I'm getting at. Although, who knows what we may see when he visits the DMZ. It's a big mystery. Okay. Lots of discussion this morning. Also, not only because we saw Donald Trump in all his glory screaming his head off this morning on Twitter, but everybody's reporting on his mental state, how it's affecting conditions in the White House. There's stories all over the place about just basically Trump is, 1, an idiot, and 2, mentally unstable, and 3, everybody on his staff has to dance around this fact and do their best to try and keep him from flying off the handle. And that could mean everything from firing them on the spot to some sort of horribly irresponsible tweet that triggers an international crisis to who knows what. Let's see. Politico's version of this today. White House aides lean on delays and distractions to manage Trump. When he gets all upset, this is how they deal with it. I guess I should really start elsewhere and maybe follow up with this one. But I guess, well, let's see. Who's got the leading example of this? The Washington Post, I guess, was the first one out of the box with their pressure cooker piece. Well, I'll click through to that one. A pressure cooker. Trump's frustration and fury rupture alliances, threaten agenda. That's Robert Costa, Philip Rucker, Ashley Parker reporting on that subject. But last night, I guess, is when this started to roll out. Frustrated by his cabinet and angry that he has not received enough credit for his handling of 3 successive hurricanes, which he, of course, botched horribly, but whatever. Yes, over the weekend and into Monday, he released a video. Well, really a sort of a theatrical trailer, which, by the way, the production value of it was absolute crap. I really wish we were free to, maybe the FCC, maybe they can stop using the FCC to regulate business so much, and we can free ourselves to tell you what we really think of that. I mean, who cares whether it's good or not? But I mean, honestly, you couldn't put together 2 minutes of clips about hurricane relief without using the same video of the trucks entering the military base twice within a minute or so of one another too. It was just really horribly done. Anyway, he also tweeted around with the note that nobody could have done as much for Puerto Rico as I did. Nobody could have handled this thing. Now, nobody should have done it that way. No one should have been permitted. Nobody would have if they were normal. But it's not a matter of nobody could. He still thinks he's done not only a good job, but the greatest job ever done on any hurricane in Puerto Rico, and it's a total disaster. By the way, I am enjoying very much the puffiness around the eyes captured in all of the latest photos of Donald Trump. He's looking really quite horrible. I think that Twinkie is maybe working its way toward his heart as we speak, but it gives him this very odd chameleon look, I think. The puffy chameleon eyes are really entertaining, except that it's going to kill him, and that's, sad for his family. Not for me, I don't care. And it might not even be a sad event for his family. A family like that, when there's money at stake, a death in the family is just like a redistributive opportunity. They don't care. Anyway, I don't think they're humans. I really don't. Frustrated by his cabinet and angry that he's not received enough credit for his handling of 3 successive hurricanes, there's another one coming, President Trump is now lashing out, rupturing alliances and imperiling his legislative agenda. Numerous White House officials and outside advisors said Monday. Monday, of course, he spent the day golfing. Once again, he was at Trump National with Lindsey Graham, famously, who now claims that Trump shot a 73. I doubt that very much. I'm pointing out that it was in windy and wet conditions. 73, of course, went over par. And somebody else pointed out, sent around the scorecard of the leading scorers at the senior PGA event that was held there earlier this year. You're talking about Donald Trump shooting scores that would have beat many of the top senior pros, and there's no chance in hell that he actually did that. All right. In a matter of days, Trump has torched bridges all around him, nearly imploded an informal deal with Democrats to protect young undocumented immigrants brought to the country as children, and plunged himself into the culture wars on issues ranging from birth control to the national anthem. In so doing, Trump is laboring to solidify his standing with his populist base and return to the comforts of his campaign, especially after the embarrassing defeat of Senator Luther Strange in last month's Alabama GOP special election, despite the president's trip there to campaign with the senator. Senator Bob Corker's brutal assessment of Trump's fitness for office, warning that the president's reckless behavior could launch the nation on the path to World War III, also hit like a thunderclap inside the White House, where aides feared possible ripple effects among other Republicans on Capitol Hill. After a caustic volley of Twitter insults between Trump and Coker, a Tennessee Republican who chairs the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, few GOP leaders came to the president's defense Monday, though few sided openly with Corker either. The most vocal Trump defender was the one under the president's direction, Vice President Pence. Trump in recent days has shown flashes of fury and left his aides, including White House Chief of Staff John F. Kelly, scrambling to manage his outbursts. He has been frustrated, in particular with Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, who reportedly last week called him a moron. Trump's Sunday morning Twitter tirade against Corker caught staffers by surprise. Really? Not really. Although the president had been brooding over the senator's comments a few days earlier about Trump's chaos endangering the nation. One Trump confidant likened the president to a whistling teapot, saying that when he does not blow off steam, he can turn into a pressure cooker, which, of course, was how they bombed our beautiful Boston Marathon. I just want you to remember that, everybody. Pressure cooker and explode. Just like, okay, you get the idea. I think we are in pressure cooker territory, said this person, who spoke on the condition of anonymity to talk candidly. This portrait of the president increasingly isolated in the capital city is based on interviews with 18 White House officials, one for every beautiful hole of golf I played on Columbus Day. Ay carambas. That's the, do I have that wrong? Is it the wrong day? 18 holes, 18 White House officials. According to outside advisors and other Trump associates, blah, blah, blah. Returning to the article, in a late afternoon unsolicited email to reporters on Monday, Pence's office blasted out a blanket response under the vice president's name, addressing criticisms of the president. Statement bemoaned empty rhetoric and baseless attacks against Trump while touting his handling of global threats from Islamic State terrorists to North Korea. How are we doing on the 30-day plan to totally destroy ISIS, by the way? Anybody? No? No one heard anything about that one? That's what American leadership on the world stage looks like, and no amount of criticism at home can diminish those results, the statement concluded. But Pence's words did little to reassure some Trump allies who fear that the president's feud with Corker could cause more trouble for the administration and further unravel threadbare relationships on Capitol Hill. One Trump loyalist, noting that Corker has many more friends in the Senate than Trump does, said the rift could dash chances for a tax law overhaul or other meaningful legislation. His presidency could be doomed. It already is, said this person, who spoke on a condition of anonymity so as not to alienate the president or his staff. Why do we keep explaining why they're speaking on a condition of anonymity? We know why they're speaking on it. You're wasting my time, Robert. I have limited time to read these comments. Please keep it. All right. We have been watching the slow motion breakup of the Republican Party, and Trump is doing what he can to speed it up, said Patrick Cadell, a veteran pollster who has worked with Stephen K. Bannon and who used to be nominally a Democratic pollster, but okay, whatever. Trump's former chief strategist who now runs Breitbart News, a conservative website. You know all about that. Bannon, by the way, I spent the weekend insisting that Corker had to resign from office. He and others saying, if you can't support President Trump, you should resign, which is, of course, not how any of this works, but whatever. And I think Bannon was saying if he had an ounce of integrity, he'd resign. Now, Bannon, of course, has resigned and hasn't given him any integrity that anybody has been able to discern. But whatever, it's just a throwaway line. Trump is firmly placing himself on the outside, trying to become an almost independent president, Cadell said. He knows that many people will be with him, that he helps himself when he's not seen as the Republican president. But what about this program? What about his program? That's the question, and possibly the cost of what he's doing. He has no program. He doesn't care. Won't affect anything. Inside the White House, reaction to Corker's comments has been mixed. Some Trump aides believe it's dangerous for the president to fight with Corker, chairman of the powerful Senate committee, who is not running for re-election and therefore feels he has nothing to lose. Other Trump aides blame Corker for what they consider an act of betrayal, arguing that he started the feud in a bid for relevance by a lame duck lawmaker. That's not going to do it, but okay. They also accused Corker of hypocrisy, noting that he was chummy with Trump and did not voice any concerns about his leadership style when he thought he might be picked as vice president or secretary of state. That's true. Good point. Christopher Ruddy, who always gets himself into these pieces, chief executive of Newsmax and a Trump friend, said Donald Trump never truly severs relationships. There's always a dialogue, and with Corker, this isn't the total end point. Trump sees relationships as negotiations, and that's what they're in. I believe that. I think Christopher Ruddy may have a good point here. Witness the fact that he went golfing yesterday with Lindsey Graham, whom he had a bitter feud earlier, and they traded insults as well. And Trump loved to insult his droopy eyes, et cetera, et cetera. Graham has as much as said that he thinks Trump is a moron as well. But he had a good time golfing with him. Great host. I had a fun time. And he is a great host. I guess we might as well point that out. If you're golfing with Trump, he loves to make sure you're having a good time, which I guess is the origin of the have a great time. Everybody have a good time in this hurricane. If you're with Trump, he thinks you're having a good time. That's a basic fact about Donald Trump, even if you're dying from a hurricane. Many in the White House say they appreciate the disciplined structure Kelly has implemented, but it has left Trump without the free-flowing conversations with staff and outsiders that he had come to relish. Too bad. That's the job. Suck it up. These familiar faces often buoyed Trump's mood and gave him a safe sounding board. It's not safe for the rest of us, though, even if at times they interfered with the workings of government. Oh, yeah, okay. Trump is also without his longtime aide-de-camp and former head of security Keith Schiller, who departed the White House this fall as director of Oval Office operations. It's not a real thing. Schiller was a constant at Trump's side for years and was adept at soothing his foul moods. His absence has left Trump with few generational peers with whom he feels comfortable venting about his staff or his rivals or just talking about sports, according to some of the president's friends. Tough crap. Like I said, that's the job. Either quit or do it. Trump, meanwhile, has been seeking regular counsel from friends outside the government, including investor Thomas J. Barrack, who chaired his inauguration and helped him steal all that money. Among some in Trump circles, Barrack has been buzzed about as a possible replacement for Kelly, should tensions between the president and his top aide become unsustainable, which they will. But people familiar with Barrack's thinking said he feels he can best serve Trump as a friend and outside advisor rather than as a member of the White House staff. Doesn't want to go to jail. The president has given no indication publicly that he is mulling another change, and over the weekend he heaped praise on Kelly. John Kelly is one of the best people I've ever worked with, Trump told reporters on Saturday. He's doing an incredible job, and he told me for the last 2 months he loves it more than anything he's ever done. He hates it, but okay. He will be here, in my opinion, for the entire 7 remaining years. He's already won re-election. You see, still, Trump is facing political headwinds, including from his base. The Alabama Senate primary last month, in which far-right challenger, what's-his-face, Moore, defeated a more establishment Republican, maybe, strange, of course, whom the president had endorsed, served as a warning flare for Trump's team, highlighting the risk he could run if he alienates the core supporters who helped lift him to electoral victory. The president has groused to numerous White House aides about his concerns over his popularity with my people, his base. He blames the Republican establishment and others for failing to enact his agenda and making him look feckless, and is unhappy with losing in Alabama, according to people briefed on White House deliberations. Trump also made it known to several people that he wished to have a rally in North Carolina over the weekend, and not just a fundraiser, but he ultimately flew down only for the fundraiser, spending just 2 hours on the ground in Greensboro. Trump complained that he wished he had gotten back out in front of the rowdy crowds he loves. These people said, Donald Trump got elected with minority support from the American electorate, and most of the efforts thus far are focused on energizing and solidifying the 40% of Americans who were with him, primarily by attacking the 60% who were not. Republican pollster Whit Ayers said, that is great for his supporters, but it makes it very difficult to accomplish anything in a democracy. Trump's political calculus is complicated by Bannon's return to his previous role at the helm of Breitbart. He never left it. Now working to forward a nationalist agenda, that would be white supremacist agenda, from outside the confines of the administration, Bannon has vowed war, hashtag, against any Republican lawmakers he believes are insufficiently conservative or who fail to help push through the agenda he and Trump outlined during the campaign. Bannon is recruiting GOP primary challengers in nearly all of the 2018 Senate races, looking for candidates who could defeat Republicans he views as too establishment and highlight the president's stances on issues such as immigration and trade. Again, we discussed it a little bit yesterday. Mixed feelings about that one. On the one hand, it could blow everything up. On the other hand, they could win. So who knows? The White House effort to woo back the populist wing of the party after stumbling in the Alabama race has been mixed. I wouldn't worry about it. They'll be back. That's fine. I don't think anybody who loves Moore hates Trump. They're not even angry at Trump for not supporting Moore. It'll all be okay. And besides which, also some great points made over the past couple of days from some political journalists pointing out Bannon didn't carry Moore across the finish line. Roy Moore is a very popular politician in Alabama and has been for a long time. He won election to the state Supreme Court twice, even after being kicked off the state Supreme Court. It is no surprise that he could win a Republican primary there, and Bannon added nothing to it. Thank you. So where were we? The White House effort to woo back the populist wing after stumbling in Alabama. When Trump advisors contacted Breitbart writers Sunday to highlight a list of hardline immigration principles the administration had just released, there was little enthusiasm for the White House's outreach and skepticism of Trump's commitment to combating illegal immigration, according to two people familiar with the exchange. Even the Trump family has become a flashpoint On Monday, the president's first and third wives, Ivana and Melania, respectively, in case you didn't remember their names, engaged in a public spat. In an interview with ABC's Good Morning America to promote her new book, Raising Trump, Ivana Trump, the mother of the president's three eldest children, said, "I'm basically first Trump wife, okay? I'm first lady." I don't know why she felt the need to say that. The actual first lady, Ivanka Trump, had the other first lady, Melania Trump, answer the question for her. She did not let the slight go unanswered. Her spokeswoman at the White House, Stephanie Grisham, issued a statement dismissing Ivana's comments as attention-seeking and self-serving noise. Almost certainly true. But that's true of everything that the Trumps do, and no surprise there. So that was the kickoff of this round of Trump's a pressure cooker, yada, yada. Forbes had a piece that I think adds a little bit to the picture. We'll see if we can get it to open properly and share it with you. Inside Trump's head. I must have a special effect for this somewhere. Do I have some sort of, I need an echo. Inside Trump's head. I'm sure there's a built-in effect here somewhere. Maybe, I can call myself on Skype. How about that? And then I can have that echo. That's when I needed it. Inside Trump's head. Here it is. Ready? That's the end of the article. There's nothing in there. An exclusive interview. I'm kidding. With the president and the single theory that explains everything. Oh my God, another interview. Randall Lane. And that came out today at 5:30 in the morning. And it's already an editor's pick. How do you like that? If Trump really did call the White House a dump, he did. He's over it. Inside the small West Wing study where he stacks his papers and takes his meals atop what he calls his working desk, the president talks volubly about a chandelier he had installed and the oil paintings of Lincoln and Teddy Roosevelt. He pokes open the door to his pristine private bathroom. This one doesn't have the gold toilet, but that's in Trump Tower. A must for the germaphobe in chief. He shows everybody. That's interesting. He pokes open the door to his pristine private bathroom. He's showing it on his, this is it. This is my tour of the White House. Look at my crapper. It's terrific. He also takes us outside to see the serene swimming pool. And inside the Oval Office, freshly renovated with drapes, carpet, and fixtures that lean heavily on, guessed it, gold, he slides his hand across the same resolute desk where JFK handled the Cuban Missile Crisis and Reagan fought the Cold War, adorned with nothing but 2 telephones and a call button. "This looks very nice," says the president. "This looks very nice, dear." That's about all he's got to say. That's his vocabulary for you. The call button, of course, the famous "Bring me a Diet Coke" button. That he got installed. Can't fix the hurricanes, but I can get myself a Diet Coke. He could easily be pitching a Trump Tower penthouse or a Doral Golf Club membership, and over the course of nearly 1 hour interview in the Oval Office, President Trump stays true to the same Citizen Trump form that Forbes has seen for 35 years. Oh, glowing profile coming, I guess. He boasts, with a dose of hyperbole, that any student of FDR or even Barack Obama could undercut. "I've had just about the most legislation passed of any president in a 9-month period that's ever served. We had over 50 bills passed. I'm not talking about executive orders only, which are very important. I'm talking about bills." Of course, reality, by the way, as somebody else pointed out, at least 14 of those were resolutions and not bills, and most of them were renaming post offices, etc. So it's all pretty much garbage. But he believes it. That's the point. This is in his head. He counterpunches, in this case firing a shot at Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, who he picked for the job, who reportedly called his boss a moron. "I think it's fake news. But if he did that, I guess we'll have to compare IQ tests, and I can tell you who's going to win." And above all, he sells. "I also have another bill, an economic development bill, which I think will be fantastic, which nobody knows about, which you are hearing about for the first time. Economic development incentives for companies. Incentives for companies to be here. Companies that keep jobs in America get rewarded. Those that send operations offshore get penalized severely. It's both a carrot and a stick. said the president. It's a carrot stick, is what I'm saying. It's an incentive to stay, but it is perhaps even more so if you leave. It's going to be very tough for you if you think that you're going to be able to sell your product back into our country. Like Ivanka. Excuse for my coughing. And so here we are. The first president to come solely from the private sector, representing the party that for more than a century championed laissez-faire capitalism and free trade, proposing that government punish and reward companies based on where they choose to locate factories and offices. Is the president comfortable with that idea? I'm not even sure it's an idea, quite honestly. What? I'm very comfortable, he replies. What I want to do is reciprocal. See, I think the concept of reciprocal is a very nice concept. God damn it, he's an idiot. I think the concept of reciprocal is a very nice concept. If somebody is charging us 50%, what? Charging us 50%? The hell does that even mean? If someone is charging us 50%, we should charge them 50%. Right now, they charge us 50%, and we charge them nothing. That doesn't work with me. It never has. Donald Trump didn't get rich building businesses, period. Comma. Despite years of brand burnishing via The Apprentice and millions of votes from people who craved exactly that experience. Instead, his forte lies in transactions, buying and selling and cutting deals that assure him a win regardless of the outcome for others. Meh, not really. The nuance is essential. Entrepreneurs and business people create and run entities that have any number of interested parties, shareholders and customers and employees and partners and hometowns that in theory all share in success. It's not the American theory of the way business happens, but it used to be. Now, of course, shareholders is where it starts and ends. Under Steve Jobs and Tim Cook, Apple has helped early shareholders multiply their investments nearly 400-fold, turn thousands of options-wielding employees into millionaires, swelling the local tax base, performed similar wonders for Taiwanese supplier Foxconn, and made customers so deliriously happy that they wait all night to fork over hundreds of dollars for products that will be obsolete 2 years later. That's a good point. Deal makers rarely seek that kind of a win-win-win-win-win-win. Whether it's a stock trade, a swap of middle relievers, or optioning a real estate parcel, a deal tends to involve just two parties and generally results in one coming out ahead and the other, so much so that a win-win is considered a noteworthy aberration. Man is the most vicious of all animals, Trump told People People magazine, in 1981. Hence no voice for that one. That was when he could speak normally. And it merited a mention the first time he appeared in Forbes a year later. Life is a series of battles ending in victory or defeat. It's a mentality that remains hardwired in President Trump, although much of it has arterial plaque clinging to it. Nearly a year after the most stunning election day in many decades, pundits still profess to find themselves continually shocked by President Trump. They shouldn't be. His worldview has been incredibly consistent, rather than as an opportunity to turn ideology into policy. He views governing the way he does business as an endless string of deals to be won or lost, both at the negotiating table and in the court of public opinion. Look at his first year through this prism and it makes sense. And it offers clues for the next 3 years, or 7. Ask President Trump if he's having fun in his new job, and he has a quick answer. I'm having fun. I'm enjoying it. We're accomplishing a lot. Your stock market is at an all-time high. Your jobs, your unemployment is at the lowest point in almost 17 years. We have fantastic numbers coming out. Of course, by the way, we did get the September jobs numbers the other day. First net losses posted in 7 years. So we're all about jobs, even if it means we're all about losing those jobs, I guess. Fantastic numbers aren't generally how most people would measure fun, but Trump always has. Other people paint beautifully on canvas or write wonderful poetry. He wrote In the Art of the Deal 30 years ago, which means he didn't write it. I like making deals, preferably big deals. That's how I get my kicks. Numbers offer Trump validation. That's true. IQ, etc., right? It's all about the numbers. They determine the winner and loser of any deal and establish an industry hierarchy. It's why Trump, more than any of the 1,600 or so people who've been in the Forbes 400, has spent more time lobbying and cajoling Forbes to get a higher valuation and validation. An excellent insight and a key point. Glad we read this far. In the Oval Office, when I tell him the markets are up 20% during his term, he stretches the time period to a year, an even glossier figure. No, 25 since the election. You have to go since the election. I see, because, of course, why not? Well, the market does tend to price things in a little bit earlier. I suppose he has an argument on that one, but it certainly makes him look better, I guess, if you believe in such things. That depends on the index, of course. He's conveniently using the most Trump-friendly one, NASDAQ. That's a good point. But the president will brook no such subtlety. Since Election Day, it's 25%, period. It has gone up since Election Day, $5.2 trillion. $5.2 trillion. If Hillary Clinton would have won, the markets would have gone down substantially. He's similarly proud of the GDP. We'll talk a little bit more about that after we get back from the second and shorter of our station breaks for station identification. We'll be right back after these, well, short messages. Are they messages? We'll find out. Listen up. Welcome back to the Kagro in the Morning Show. I told you it was going to be a short break. We do a short one at the top of the hour. We are ready to roll back into the Forbes profile. I think we're doing well with this one here. I know there's a million things we could be covering, and I feel like sometimes we spend too much time on some of these articles, but I think this will help give us the zeitgeist, as we sometimes say, or zeitgeist, as we alternatively say, and then we puzzle ourselves over whether or not one or the other is the only acceptable pronunciation. Those of you who know the answer can tweet me that one. I told you that Forbes was reporting that Trump is similarly proud of the GDP. So GDP last quarter was 3.1%. That would be, of course, the growth in the GDP. But whatever. He doesn't know anything about numbers. He loves numbers, doesn't understand them. Most of the folks that are in your business and elsewhere, that would be the reporters, of course, were saying that we would not be hit for a long time. We wouldn't get the 3% growth for a long time. You know, Obama never hit the number. When informed that his predecessor did several times, Trump pivots immediately. He never hit it on a yearly basis. Never hit it on a yearly basis. That's 8 years. I think we'll go substantially higher than that. And I think this quarter would have been phenomenal, except for the hurricanes. Well, they might have been, except it didn't happen because life intervenes. That's the way things actually work. But okay. And what of those storms? Well, I've gotten very high marks for the hurricanes. He says, can you imagine that this is your formulation of this? By the way, I've gotten very high marks. No, you haven't. Not only have you not gotten that, but there are no marks. They don't give out marks for these things. But if you had been marked for it, you would have been marked as an idiot. You suck at this job. You're the worst. Literally the worst in history. I've gotten very high marks for the hurricanes. He says 2 days before he tweets about how he wasn't getting enough personal credit. I mean, he doesn't even, see, it's a good point. He doesn't even measure up to his own made-up measures. I've gotten very high marks. I'm angry, though, because nobody is giving me high marks. What the hell is going on here? You understand? Okay. Anyway, the president's much-maligned Twitter stream provides a modern way to self-validate. Anything he says registered thousands of likes, thousands of retweets, and over time, millions of new followers. By the way, here's a suggestion for Twitter. Not for everybody, but just for Donald Trump. Can you program this? Extra button. There's a like button. There's the retweet button. And if you added a hate button, I'd love to see what would that do. You want to measure, you want Donald Trump to go crazy? Give America a hate button just on Donald Trump. I don't know whether that's possible. And I don't think it's something that should be done for everybody. Although, maybe it's good for all of us to to get a realistic look of whether or not people really like what we're saying or are just liking it because it's, they're liking it ironically or whatever. But put a hate button on there and let's go see. And a different button for a retweet, like a like retweet and a hate retweet. And let them take a look at that and see how much each of his tweets are liked and hated. That might solve something. Or, well, it could get us into a world war. I don't know. You tell me whether you think it's a good idea. Anyway, anything he says registers thousands of likes, thousands of retweets over time, millions of new followers. So what if some of those followers are fake accounts? Or rather, I'm sure, so what if some of those followers are fake accounts is how they're asking. But what if they are, actually? Big numbers have always attracted Trump, regardless of their accuracy. He numbered the floors in Trump Tower to make the building seem taller. Skipped numbers, remember? Obsessed over his apprentice ratings and lied about the square footage of his penthouse. All of this explains the inexplicable, the need to exaggerate crowd sizes or shoot the messenger anytime a bad poll comes out. For Trump, numbers also serve as a pliant tool. American business has fully embraced big data, Moneyball-style analytics, and machine learning, where figures suggest the best course of action. But Trump, for decades, has boasted about how he conducts his own research, largely anecdotal, and then buys or sells based on instinct. Numbers are then used to justify his gut, which is tremendous. He governs exactly that way, sticking with even his most illogical campaign promises, the kind other politicians walk back from once confronted with actual policy decisions, whether making Mexico pay for a border wall when illegal immigration is historically low, or pulling the U.S. from the Paris Climate Accords despite the fact that compliance is voluntary, citing whatever figures he can to justify his stances. When asked about Russian interference in the election, for example, he notes that he got 306 electoral votes. I think he's actually miscounting too, right? And adds that the Democrats need an excuse for losing an election that in theory they should have won. For the greatest ever American salesman, yes, including P.T. Barnum, statistics serve as marketing grist. He also uses numbers as leverage, a way to set parameters and eventually declare victory. Back when he bought the New Jersey Generals of the United States Football League in 1984, he reportedly described his bidding style to his fellow owners thusly: "When I build something for somebody, I always add $50 million or $60 million onto the price. My guys come in, they say it's going to cost $75 million. I say it's going to cost $125 million, and I build it for $100 million. Basically, I did a lousy job, but they think I did a great job." According to Trump, that trick explains the current proposal to cut the corporate tax rate to 20%, after months of saying he wanted to go even lower, to 15%. "I was actually saying 15 for the purpose of getting to 20, he says, adding, "As you know, this will be a negotiation for the next 30 days, but I wanted the 15 in order to get to the 20. It's a trait he has apparently long admired in presidents. Back in the 1980s, he recalled getting a $5 million request from Jimmy Carter to help build his presidential library. Jimmy Carter had the nerve, the guts, the balls, he says, to ask for something extraordinary. He wrote in The Art of the Deal, the ability, above all, helped him get elected president. Okay, he now loves Jimmy Carter. One bid, however, isn't enough. In a transactional mindset, when the person across the table is a competitor rather than a partner, the best terms come from creating multiple bidders, which explains why his sudden fondness for Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, whether on the debt limit increase, immigration proposals for dreamers, at least briefly, or health care. "I think the Democrats want to make a deal," said Trump, referring to Obamacare. "At the same time, I think I have a deal with the Republicans." You don't. "So I have the best of both worlds." You don't. That's business to a certain extent. I'm very able to make deals with Democrats if I have to. The specter of playing each side off the other also looms over tax negotiations. We'll be talking about all of it. It will be a very serious set of negotiations going on over the next period of time, which is not really how you use that phrase. Of course, those who don't see eye to eye with the president will feel his Twitter lash. Ask Ryan. Does zilch. McConnell, get back to work. Schumer, crying Chuck. Lindsey Graham, dumb mouthpiece. Come play golf with me. Elizabeth Warren, very racist. John McCain, dummy. Or approximately 1,000 others in the past year who have had the temerity to stand up to the president. Much as these digs seem personal, in truth, he's just sticking with a business tactic he's long employed. Again, from The Art of the Deal, I'm the first to admit that I am very competitive and that I'll do nearly anything within legal bounds, and maybe not, to win. Sometimes part of making a deal is denigrating your competition. Fine, you suck. There you go. Or denigrating your own team. In any situation, Trump must be the alpha dog. Delegation isn't his strong suit. Witness what happened when Tillerson apparently reopened a dialogue with the North Koreans. He was wasting his time, Trump now says. But doesn't publicly upbraiding his top diplomat effectively neuter him? I'm not undermining, Trump says. I think I'm actually strengthening authority. It's hard to see whose authority he's strengthening other than his own. In Donald Trump's orbit, clearly, no one is off limits. A decade ago, Donald Trump Jr. told Forbes this story about his now presidential father. I'd be going to work with my dad when I was 5 or 6 years old. Besides telling me again and again not to drink, not to smoke, not to chase women, he always told me, never trust anybody. Okay. Then he'd ask me if I trusted anybody, and I'd say, no. Do you trust me? He'd ask. I'd say, yes. And he'd say, no, don't even trust me. Well, that's probably good advice. Thanks to The Apprentice, most people think Donald Trump ran a big company. He did not. Thank you. Thank God. Finally, somebody is saying it. And in Forbes, too. The Trump Organization has 22 real estate assets with their own management teams. Trump licenses his brand to over a dozen entities, collecting royalties. All in all, it's a valuable company that's more impressive for its efficiency than its breadth. Trump leveraged that mindset and his formidable skills as a marketer and showman to run a historically efficient political campaign. Nobody talks about it. Everybody talks about it. Nobody talks about it, but I spent much less money and won, he says. He's absolutely right. But there's precious little about running the Trump Organization that provides the kind of experience that it takes to run the ultimate organization in America, the U.S. government. At the Trump Organization, he owns basically everything. There's no known board of directors, no outside shareholders, and no real customer base, save one-time luxury real estate buyers and golf club members. It's far closer to running a family office than running Walmart. When it comes to moguls turned presidential aspirants, compare him with the two private sector leaders who previously came closest to going directly to the Oval Office. Wendell Willkie, who ran a giant public utility before losing to FDR in 1940, and Ross Perot, whose quixotic third-party bid in 1992 was based on a career building two huge public companies, most notably Electronic Data Systems, a global firm that had its own de facto foreign policy, including a famous Iranian hostage rescue. Trump does have experience leading public companies, but even then, there was only one shareholder who mattered. When Trump controlled 40% of publicly traded Trump hotels and casino, he used it to buy a casino he privately owned for $500 million, even though one analyst thought it was worth 20% less. At one point, he also owned more than 10% of Resorts International. He cut a deal with that company that garnered him millions in fees at the expense of other owners. Neither ended well. Trump Hotels filed for bankruptcy for the first time in 2004. Resorts had gone bankrupt some years earlier after Trump cashed out. Inheriting the keys to American government is akin to a succession at General Electric or Microsoft. Continuity is generally assumed, honoring prior commitments and running the company/country as best as possible while pivoting to new priorities and policies. Trump's transactional mindset, however, doesn't see it that way, nor do many of his core supporters who expect radical change above all else. If previous policies were bad deals, he sees no reason to honor them. even at the cost of America's reputation or the perception of a stable American policy. Take Obamacare. It's a total mess, Trump says. Fair point. It's really not, but it is Forbes magazine. But doesn't Trump, as the CEO of America, have an obligation to operate it as well as he can until he has an alternative, rather than threaten to withhold payments to insurance companies, shrink the enrollment period, and slash the advertising budget? What we're doing is trying to keep it afloat because it's failing, he says. I mean, the insurance companies are fleeing and have fled. They fled before I got here. But with that being said, no, Obamacare is Obama's fault. It's nobody else's fault. But isn't it now his administration's responsibility? Yes, but I've always said Obamacare is Obama's fault. It's never going to be our fault. See, even the yes answer is a no. The same approach comes through in foreign policy again and again, whether it's the Iran deal, the Paris Climate Agreement, or especially free trade deals. Doesn't he feel a responsibility to honor agreements from previous administrations? President Trump has a quick response. No. It's a dangerous precedent. In America, where each administration, rather than building on the agreements of its predecessors, undoes each other's deals, effectively undermining the authority of any American head of state. Again, Trump shrugs. I happen to think that NAFTA will have to be terminated if we're going to make it good. Otherwise, I believe you can't negotiate a good deal. The Trans-Pacific Partnership, he says, would have been a large-scale version of NAFTA. It would have been a disaster. It's a great honor to have. I consider that a great accomplishment, stopping that. And there are many people that agree with me. I like bilateral deals. Of course he does. Trump has been doing bilateral deals his whole life, but bilateral deals are just that. One-on-one bargains carrying the implicit prospect of a negotiation that will create a winner and a loser. Doesn't this fly in the face of our multilateral world? You can have it this way and do so much more business. And if it doesn't work out with a country, you give them a 30-day notice, and you either renegotiate or not. Trump's bilateral world, of course, explains why foreign aid gets cut. It comes with a huge downside. Deals score points, but deals don't create long-term investments. It's impossible to think of something like the Marshall Plan, which teed up more than 6 decades of peace and prosperity, coming out of the Trump White House. To that, he shrugs again. For me, it's America first. We've been doing that so long that we owe $20 trillion, okay? Trump intends to run the country more like the Trump Organization in other ways. Much has been made about how slow he's been to nominate people to key positions. In the State Department, for example, he's failed to put up names for more than half of the confirmable positions. That's apparently not an accident. I'm generally not going to make a lot of the appointments that would normally be because you don't need them, he says. I mean, you look at some of these agencies, how massive they are, and it's totally unnecessary. They have hundreds of thousands of people. And how does this man, who has never really had a boss, feel about now having 330 million of them, to be exact? He acknowledges the fact, but then answers in a way that is perfect, consistent Trump. It doesn't matter, because I'm going to do the right thing. Wow. That is some kind of profile, and again, took us a long time to get through these two things, but I think it sets the tone for probably the rest of the week. We did have the Politico piece that hints that White House aides used delay and distraction to manage Trump. I think we probably have seen that for ourselves, and I don't know that we're going to learn a great deal necessarily from this probably very fine Josh Dawsey piece about how they use it, but maybe we can pull out an example or two. It's not a huge, long article like the other ones, but wanted to, we'll move this, we'll transition from this to some of the shorter pieces, I guess, and then catch up with Paula today and find out where we are. Oh, you know what? I need to check the duration of today's piece. Okay, got it. So where were we with this? Politico, just beginning. As White House Chief of Staff Reince Priebus mused to associates that telling President Donald Trump no was usually not an effective strategy. Telling him next week was often the better idea. Trump would impulsively want to fire someone like Attorney General Jeff Sessions, create a new wide-ranging policy with far-flung implications like increasing tariffs on Chinese steel imports or end a decades-old deal like the North American Free Trade Agreement. Enraged with a TV segment or frustrated after a meandering meeting, the president would order it done immediately. Delaying the decision would give Priebus and others a chance to change his mind or bring in advisors to speak with Trump, and in some cases to ensure Trump would drop the idea altogether and move on. #Dotard. But thank God. Publicly, the White House has pushed back against Tennessee Republican Senator Bob Corker, suggesting Trump must be managed like a toddler. He called the White House an adult daycare center on Twitter on Sunday. In a separate New York Times interview, Corker said aides are forced to spend their days trying to keep the president from going off the rails. But interviews with 10 current and former administration officials, advisors, longtime business associates, and others close to Trump describe a process where they try to install guardrails for a president who goes on gut feeling, and many days are spent managing the president, just as Corker said. You either had to just convince him something better was his idea, or ignore what he had said to do and hope he forgot about it the next day, said Barbara Race, a former executive in the Trump organization. Trump, several advisors and aides said, sometimes comes into the Oval Office worked into a lather from talking to friends or watching TV coverage in the morning. Sometimes a side conversation with an aide like Stephen Miller on immigration or TV hosts like Sean Hannity would set him off. Then staffers would step in to avert a rash decision by calming him down. At times, new information would be shared, like charts on how farmers might feel about ending the North American Free Trade Agreement, or how his base might react negatively to an idea, like the verbal deal he struck with Democrats on immigration last month. In the first stretches of the administration, aides would ask outside figures to intervene with Trump. Among those sometimes engaged, business figures Stephen Schwartzman, Tom Barrack, again, Richard Lefrak, or politicians he respects like Corker and New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, among others. Can you imagine? That he respects those guys. One outside advisor said White House aides had called him on at least 5 occasions to intervene. On occasion, at least some of these advisors have plotted about their conversations with Trump to coordinate message and share notes. Corker, for example, has been called by White House aides several times to speak with Trump about foreign policy, from Iran to Syria to North Korea to his Afghanistan strategy. Sometimes he'd check in with senior officials like Tillerson and Mattis before talking to the president. One senior administration official said Corker had even been put on speakerphone in the Oval Office where aides sat gathered in chairs. Corker's spokeswoman didn't respond to a request for comment. Sometimes advisors and people who know him well deliberately engage the media. Corker has told others on Capitol Hill that Trump doesn't listen unless he hears the criticism on TV or reads it in the paper. Chris Ruddy, in the article again, longtime friend of Trump, said on television in June that he thought Trump might fire special counsel Bob Mueller on TV, creating a firestorm, a calculated attempt to preempt what he feared could be a politically fatal move by the president. Donald Trump has spent his entire life as a free agent. He always has done things his way, Ruddy said in an interview on Monday. This has been a huge adjustment process, but I think he is making adjustments. He added, what the senator said was inappropriate. He has some legitimate concerns about the president's use of Twitter, but you can make that point without saying the president is a child, though it is correct. Kellyanne Conway, the president's counselor, went on television to say the comments only furthered the unfair narrative that Trump wasn't a fairly elected president and skilled in the office, and that Trump is spoken about in ways no president should be spoken about. Well, that's true, except you should not have been president, and so it's hard to resist, I guess. Ress said Trump often had very good instincts about people and business decisions. White House officials say Trump asks sharp questions and has a better political sense on many occasions than they do. Unlike some politicians, he welcomes many and disparate opinions, and he sometimes listens to others, particularly if they made a good case, bolstered by numbers. But he reacts to everything. He's always reacting, Rice said, an observation mirrored by many White House aides who say they feel every day begins at a deficit. The Priebus strategy was largely to delay. Instead of ousting Sessions like Trump wanted, Priebus, Bannon, and others had outside advisors close to Trump call him and explain the ramifications. They tried to remind him what a dedicated campaign supporter Sessions was, and that his firing could set off unpredictable dominoes. Decisions on Chinese steel tariffs, NAFTA, and other issues were simply delayed past major events, like Chinese President Xi Jinping's visit to Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort or the G7 or G20 conferences. You have to just move the conversation along to something else, one White House official said. Trump would sometimes lash out at Priebus for not doing what he wanted immediately, though, several officials said. Priebus declined to comment. There were limits to that strategy or any tactic deployed to manage Trump. Some aides tried to delay the Paris Climate Accord decision, hoping Trump could be talked out of pulling out, but to no avail. Trump wanted to fire FBI Director James Comey for at least a week before it happened. Aides, including Priebus, Bannon, and White House Chief Counsel Don McGahn, continually told him what a perilous threat it could be to his presidency. Outside advisors called Trump and warned him against it. Eventually, Trump went away to Bedminster for the weekend and decided to fire Comey anyway. New Chief of Staff John Kelly, in other words, he ran away from all the advice he was getting and holed up somewhere where he couldn't get any more if he didn't want it. New Chief of Staff John Kelly has tried to limit bad decisions by blocking information from the president's desk, keeping certain advisors out of his ear, and limiting access to the Oval Office. Kelly has told others he can't control the president, but he can control much of what gets to the president. Staff says Trump is already chafing at the procedures he has put in place. Trump has, on several occasions, walked down to the Oval Office in the morning and told aides he knew they didn't like the tweets he'd sent that morning. They're not presidential, I know, he said with a mocking tone on the word presidential, according to one person familiar with his comments. Then the next day he'd wake up and send more tweets they didn't like, because that's the kind of jerk-ass he really is. And that's the end of this particular profile. Okay, coming up on our last break, probably when we come back, we will reset for just a moment, give Paula a chance to take over the microphone and give you her 7th of 8 installments on her series, and we can gather our thoughts, catch breath, take a drink of water, and figure out which of the many, many, many possible directions should we go next. It's all about Trump, no doubt about it, but maybe we can do a little bit of roundup of other news and hit the highlights of some other things. It's really impossible to cover politics these days without spending a lot of time on Trump and his temperament, which is, of course, exactly why he should never have been anywhere near the Oval Office in the first place. Lots of Russian news, of course, lots of a pileup of incidents of their having manipulated yet more social media platforms. We'll see if we can get caught up on all of that. And, I guess a quick mention as well of the fact that there was another white supremacist rally in Charlottesville over the weekend. I was in Charlottesville, or in the Charlottesville area. Didn't attend the rally, not a white supremacist. Didn't go to counter-protest either. I think they pulled this one pretty quickly, pretty much of a surprise. Honestly, I thought, you can never let it go unremarked upon, but I thought perhaps maybe by starving it of attention, that might frustrate these guys a little bit. I don't know if it's certainly not the only path to dealing with the fact that they held another such rally. But as many people were pointing out, they noted that the president and high-ranking officials in the Trump administration took no notice of it as well. Instead, of course, tweeting angrily about football for the weekend. That's their preferred issue, of course, but it's not like they were going to come out against the white supremacists anytime soon. They didn't do it the first time when everyone had their eye on the ball, and they're not going to do it now. Lots of other directions we could go, of course, and we'll try and catch up and bring things somewhat back to normal before turning the microphones over to the guys on the after show. But for now, leading into our third and final break, we'll see what other things we can take a quick peek at. Of course, Brad Parscale, also on 60 Minutes over the weekend. Did anybody see that one? I didn't get a chance to look at it, but there's a write-up on it, CBS News. We'll dive into that and see whether we can pull anything more out of that after our next break. We'll be right back after this timeout for station identification. Welcome back to the Kagro in the Morning Show on Netroots Radio in the final stretch of today's Tuesday show. Shall we attempt a lightning round, or shall we call this perhaps a preview of things to come later in the week on the Kagro in the Morning Show? Just things we wanted to let you know that we're aware of and want to put on the agenda to discuss. But hey, no promises. Trump could go even crazier tomorrow. You never know. Let's see. One, we'll note for the record, Harvey Weinstein and all of that. It took me a couple of days to figure out exactly who Harvey Weinstein really was, like in my own mind. I knew he was a famous name. I knew he had to do with Hollywood, but I don't keep track of that kind of stuff. Like who's the producer of famous movies? I mean, he's gigantic in that industry, of course. And really, I don't care, even if he's playing the smallest possible role in that industry. If you're a sexual abuser, then you're a jackass, and we'll have to talk about that at some point. But it took me a while to kind of catch up on all that. Anyway, the news, I guess I'll add to this. You've heard all you need to hear, I think, about the Weinstein stories. But let's just throw this one in there. Vulture.com reporting Harvey Weinstein's lawyer gave $10,000 to, you'll never guess who, Manhattan DA Cy Vance after Vance's office dropped at least one sexual assault case against him. Boy, I think we're really nearing the end of the rope for Cyrus Vance here, by the way. Yes, we're, I think, done with Harvey Weinstein having been fired from his own company. I don't know how you come back from that, but, leave it to somebody like that to find a way back. There are still defenders out there. I don't know why, but there are. That's business for you, I guess. But when are we going to maybe decide to be rid of this Cy Vance guy? Is there any way we could stretch that guy's neck a bit and be rid of him forever? Because he's a real problem, apparently, for everybody. All right. What else have we got here? A good reminder from Charles Pierce that in Esquire magazine that, yes, Bob Corker, despite the fact that he spoke out, somebody else made the point. Yeah, he said this rotten thing about Trump. Bob Corker's not your friend. You shouldn't think of him that way. That's true. Good point here made by Charles Pierce. In headline alone, Bob Corker is responsible for Trumpism too. Yeah, and we heard the bottom line of it in the articles we did read today. Yeah, he was auditioning for vice president and looking to get on his good side and had plenty of good things to say. I think he said that his trip to the G20 was what? It was like a home run, that he had done such a fantastic job when he had embarrassed everybody. Another news tidbit that will stick to the headline for this one. GOP Alabama candidates, that's Roy Moore's son, arrested for criminal trespassing. We'll dive a little bit deeper into that in The Hill. Maybe we can quickly cover that one. Just get you the basic facts of it anyway. The son of Roy Moore, Alabama's Republican Senate nominee, was booked into jail Monday for criminal trespassing. AL.com, Alabama.com reported. The Etowah County, I'm guessing at the pronunciation, I think we got that, E-T-O-W-H, Etowah County Sheriff's Office told the news outlet that Caleb Elisha Moore, wowee, 27 years old, released on a $1,000 bond just minutes after he was booked into the Etowah County Jail on Monday morning. He had turned himself in after County Circuit Clerk's office issued the warrant, which was connected to his arrest in November for misdemeanor charges of hunting without permission and hunting over bait. Etowah County Sheriff's spokeswoman Natalie Barton told the online site it's not a super-duper serious infraction, I'm sure, but as it turns out, it says Moore has a long history of crossing the law with a reported track record of 9 visits to jail. It helps if your dad's a judge or senator, I'm sure. Roy Moore, who was twice ousted as Alabama's state Supreme Court justice, defeated, of course, Senator Luther Strange in last month's GOP primary for the seat vacated by Attorney General Jeff Sessions. What a parade of losers this is. Moore is favored against Democrat Doug Jones in the December 12th special election. You can, of course, help out with Doug Jones's effort by donating online to his campaign. It shouldn't be hard to find. And Doug Jones, easy enough to Google. I don't know who's doing, making serious efforts at raising money for him. I think I like his, you can't think that he's, likely to trounce Moore. Alabama is Alabama, but it is not. I like his slogan. It was basically he's campaigning on, I won't embarrass you. Wouldn't you rather have that happen, Alabama? But Alabama would not rather have that happen. Anyway, I wonder what they'll think, if anything, about Roy Moore's son having been arrested. Hunting without permission. I mean, some of these guys consider themselves, honorable people, the hunters, and they got to follow the rules. Hunting without permission. I've been hunting on somebody else's private land without asking them. That is a fairly serious infraction in the fact that it involves hunting. You'd think if they had any principles, they would be pissed about it. Plus, hunting over bait, which apparently, do I understand this correctly? He's like putting out, bait for game as opposed to hunting it. He's just going to sit there and drink beer and lure them over there. And I guess that's an infraction too. And I guess principled hunters would be upset about that, but it's Alabama, so whatever. Anyway, moving on in our roundup, a couple other items that we need to bring to your attention. Of course, you may have heard this one already. I'll grab CNN's report about this one. Guns on campus. Campus carry working out terrifically down there in Texas at Texas Tech, which I think Texas Tech was the place that had the early accidental discharge in one of the residence halls a few weeks after they implemented I gotta stop it because it's auto playing video thanks to CNN. But anyway, they had the accidental discharge, I think, in one of the residence halls. No one hurt in that one. Now we have, of course, a police officer dead. A Texas Tech University officer was shot and killed at the campus police station in Lubbock Monday night, university officials said. The suspect, Hollis Daniels, a 19-year-old freshman from Seguin, Texas, according to university spokesman Chris Cook. Police said Daniels was apprehended after he fled on foot. The campus was on lockdown after the shooting until the suspect was taken into custody. In a statement, the school said the incident began when campus police were sent to check on a student's welfare. Earlier this evening, Texas Tech police made a student welfare check, a statement said. Upon entering the room, officers found evidence of drugs and drug paraphernalia. Officers brought the suspect to the police station for a standard debriefing. During this time, the suspect pulled a gun and shot an officer in the head. The officer is deceased. The name of the officer wasn't released, at least at that time. Texas Tech University System Chancellor Robert Duncan released a statement saying, well, you can imagine. Words cannot express how saddened I am by the tragic loss of one of our Texas Tech University police officers tonight. Our Texas Tech family is strong and will support each other as we grieve. Just a week earlier, apparently, Greg Abbott, governor of Texas, had come out to say, well, none of the predicted disasters of campus carry has occurred here. And so I guess you're all wrong about that. And then a police officer got murdered. Of course, the technical defense for all of this is that I believe campus carry, I don't know how Texas implemented it, but a lot of the discussion was students over 21 would be permitted to carry their weapons on campus if they were sufficiently permitted, and et cetera, and that you would be limited to concealed carrying in certain areas, but yada yada. I guess the word never filtered down to young Hollis here, captured alive, by the way. Turns out he's a white guy. Anyway, he decided it would be okay for him to keep a gun. And what, did they not search him when they brought? I guess if you think he's on drugs and you're bringing him in for the drug charge, I don't know. I would think a frisk of the suspect would be standard procedure, and I guess it will be now. Anyway, it's out there. We'll discuss it. There's plenty to dig into around that. Furthermore, let's see. As far as the Trump cabinet travel issues are concerned, apparently, let's see. I have a raw story report here that I'll read you the headline of. I guess we're up to 6 now. 6 Trump cabinet members charged you for 71 chartered and military flights. So I think we've now also got Elaine Chao on the list for having taken a private charter flight. Some of these things seem like less serious infractions than others, but the numbers are mounting. I guess one One or two other things that I can shoehorn in there. The Secret Service has their accounting, according to USA Today, of how much they've spent on golf carts to protect Trump while he's been golfing in Florida and New Jersey. They are up to $137,000 spent just on renting golf carts. And please keep in mind, remember, perhaps those of you new listeners may not have heard this, but the fact that Trump charges the Secret Service money at the golf course he owns for them to rent the carts that it takes to protect him while he's playing is astonishing and unconstitutional as an emolument. I mean, he can't be pocketing money. In other words, if you were wondering why it is that he's played golf 70 times since taking office, the answer is he makes bank doing it. He wins. He gets money. When he plays golf, the Secret Service has to guard him. When the Secret Service has to guard him, they have to rent golf carts. When they have to rent golf carts, they have to rent from Donald Trump. $137,000 in Donald Trump's pockets because he played golf. Wouldn't you be playing golf? And in case you're wondering, well, is that really true? I mean, yes, he owns the golf course, but it's a company. They're paying money to the company. That doesn't really mean it's $137,000 in Trump's pocket. Somebody else has to get paid. Certainly the golf cart attendants are getting paid, and they are getting paid. I don't know whether it's fair to say, though, that the $137K isn't going directly into his pockets. Remember what we were reading in the Forbes piece? Trump structures his businesses in an odd way. There aren't boards of directors. There aren't shareholders, per se. And in many cases, a lot of the golf clubs in particular, he's structured things very strangely. And it allows Donald Trump to basically dip into the coffers of any of his businesses and take what he wants. There's no guarantee of how the income is going to be distributed. People have to get paid, of course, yes. But for instance, I keep thinking about there's been a couple of controversial court cases. He's lost a couple of court cases with respect to the membership fees and things that were considered deposits in golf clubs that he acquired. Very few, if any, of his golf clubs were built by Donald Trump. He just buys other golf outfits, changes the name. Sometimes he makes some improvements to them. But then when he buys existing clubs, very often these club members have paid a membership fee or a deposit when they join. And sometimes it's an enormous amount of money, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. The deal usually is, in a normal golf club, you put $100,000 in, and very often it's refundable. It's capital used to help operate the club for the benefit of the members, and the club dips into it as necessary to keep things up. And when you leave, you either get some or all of that money back because you're no longer a member. You're not any longer responsible for the capital underwriting and upkeep of the club you're not a member of. Donald Trump, when he acquires these places, he changes those rules in the contracts, and he declares those membership fees to have been forfeit, basically, that they now belong to the Trump organization. They're not refundable, and Donald Trump has no obligation to use those funds for the betterment of the club either. So he can literally just say, I want all those membership fees paid to me, and I'm taking them and I'm leaving. And he can do just the same with the cart rental fees if he wants to. There's nobody there to say, but don't you think the cart rental fee should be plowed back into maintaining the carts? Most people would think that was true, but Donald Trump could say, I'm taking it. Or in this case, I want it put into my blind revocable trust from which I am allowed to remove any cash I want whenever I want, even while I'm president. That's the reality of how he's structured this thing. This is a payment to Donald Trump. He profits every time he plays golf. That's why he plays so much. The end. That's the story. Thank you. Now, there are one or two more stories that I think we probably could and should treat. Maybe we'll try and squeeze them in afterwards. But let us first take a pause from this rapid fire roundup and bring Paula in, figuratively, of course. We have her recorded chapter 7 of 8 pieces of her GOP abuse story. Let's roll it. She'll recap where she's been and preview the next story at the top and bottom because she's an organized person and knows what she's doing. Are you ready, Paula? Okay.
The Domestic Abuse Cycle, A Framework for Our Politics and a Path Forward, Part 7. In Part 1, I introduced my premise. The GOP uses tactics against Democrats that mirror the behaviors and the outcomes of domestic abusers, creating a warped environment. I gave examples of these tactics in Part 2, and in Part 3 described the ineffective response by Democrats. In Part 4, I talked about how the media amplifies rather than evaluates GOP abuses, and how Democrats need to recognize this dynamic. In Part 5, I covered how Democrats can move from a defensive to an offensive position by reintroducing to the public what decent standards of political behavior should be. In Part 6, I proposed additional tactics Democrats can use to counter GOP abuse, and today I will offer more. First of all, I think Democrats should coordinate with one another and offer training. Now, there's always going to be disagreements about Democratic policy specifics, but there can be very solid agreement, I think, about broad objectives. I call these umbrella categories. One umbrella is equal opportunity, and under that we have gender issues, race, religion, sexual orientation. Financial security is another umbrella category, and under that we have living wages, jobs, affordable health care, affordable education, etc. There's a number of things that fall under environmental protections. There's freedom of and from religion, equal application of the law. So again, issues can be subsumed under a handful of umbrella categories, get everyone on board regarding the primary objectives and goals, and then communicate those widely and consistently. Additionally, Democratic candidates shouldn't have to reinvent the wheel with respect to overall messaging. That wastes effort and money. They should pool resources where possible and spend money on educating office holders and candidates about meta messages and umbrella issues. Also, Democrats need to learn how to spot GOP abuse tactics in action, describe them succinctly, and offer a Democratic alternative. So I'm going to give some sample statements. Let's say we're talking about voter suppression. Here's what the Democrat could say. Donald Trump's Presidential Advisory Commission on Election Integrity is a disguised attempt to suppress votes. Genuine cases of voter fraud amount to a handful, while Republican efforts to suppress Democratic votes has been a relentless, ongoing campaign. Voter suppression is a form of abusive politics. Republicans use voter suppression to forcibly retain power in the face of voter dissatisfaction. Democrats believe in the right to vote and want real protections for our systems and citizens, not underhanded efforts to suppress votes. See what I did there? We mention a topic, we point out that a tactic is being used. Voter suppression is a form of abusive politics. We say why the Republicans use it, and we give them a Democratic alternative. Here's another one. When a Republican moots the idea of reopening some investigation against Hillary Clinton, a Democrat could say, congressional Republicans are threatening a new investigation of Hillary Clinton. Harassment by investigation is an abuse tactic that Republicans use to deflect attention from their own failures. They conduct sham investigations not to learn anything but to smear their targets. They want to harass Hillary Clinton, who is out of office, while they block investigations of Republicans who are in office and behaving badly. Democrats believe in using official powers responsibly and fairly and not as weapons to tarnish opponents. How about when a Republican lies about the ACA? Claiming the ACA was developed quickly and secretively is simply untrue. The ACA took several months. There were numerous public hearings. Multiple committees were involved. Over 130 amendments were considered. There were 79 roll call votes and 25 days of Senate debate. Republicans making this claim are lying. Lying is an abuse tactic that Republicans use to keep Americans from learning how devastating their replacement bills would be. Democrats understand the importance of health care in people's lives and sincerely work to write legislation that would actually help all Americans and do the job it was intended to do. When Republicans claim that Democrats are persecuting Christians, accusing us of persecuting Christians is a form of gaslighting, an abuse tactic Republicans use to completely misrepresent our actions and intent. Democrats firmly support the separation of church and state, a bedrock of our system of government. Just as we, more than 150 years after the Civil War, are still dealing with the consequences of that war, our founding fathers were influenced by Europe's then recent history of Christian-on-Christian religious persecution, the real kind where people were tortured and executed for being the wrong flavor of Christian. Democrats believe all Americans must be free to practice the religion of their choice, or no religion at all. There must be freedom of religion and freedom from religion, and we adamantly oppose infringements on that principle. Again, do you get the idea? Maybe it's a little wordy, doesn't work every time, but the basic concept is that you present what the Republicans are doing or saying, you point out the abuse tactic that is being used, and then you offer a democratic alternative. Now, we need to understand that the GOP will fight back. Democrats often seem to think that if they can just find that right message, all will be well. The problem is that the GOP media machine will vandalize any message that Democrats offer. And let's say it again. The GOP media machine will vandalize any message that Democrats offer. That is what they do. No Democratic messaging strategy is going to be effective without linked measures to address inevitable GOP distortions. There is no magic message that will, however meritorious, be immune to GOP vandalism. Instead of fruitlessly chasing that holy grail, Democrats need to accept this reality and plan accordingly, which does not mean avoiding messages or policy proposals that they think are even more likely to inspire Republican vandalism, because Republicans can and will distort anything. Instead, Democrats need to offer their messages and proposals and positions fearlessly and then defend them vigorously. Enabling has failed. Our only choice is to go on the offensive and, when appropriate, confront and expose abuse tactics. Then we need to expect more abuse and confront them again. Democrats have to do some conditioning of their own. They need to teach Republicans that their abuse tactics are no longer going to go unchallenged, and they need to be aggressive in their pushback. Now, some Republicans will co-opt the abuse framework. That is a typical right-wing trolling technique. But such trolls never last more than 2 rounds before they move the goalpost or start name-calling or try to end the debate or flee, because they don't have real counter-arguments. But Democrats do. Democrats need to embrace repetition and refuse to be sidetracked. When a Republican accuses a Democrat of using political abuse, he or she should say it is sad that he is so poor at defending his position that he is reduced to stealing mine. Now, to the actual point being discussed, as I said, ... Republicans are going to fight dirty. They are going to mischaracterize Democratic statements and claims. They will deflect, redirect, and gaslight. But abuse tactics work when they go unnoticed and unnamed. So Democrats should notice, name, and briefly explain them, and then return to the actual argument.
Thanks once again.
Up next, my final thoughts in conclusion.
I didn't mean to cut you off there, Paula. I thought, I didn't check the ticker there. It sounded like we were just about done, but only one installment left. I'm sad, like I'm getting to the end of a television series. I'm afraid of the finale. I want to stretch it out. Should we just wait and do it on Friday, or should we follow up immediately? Well, we'll see what our schedule allows us tomorrow. Some question mark about whether or not we're going to be able to get Joan McCarter on the air tomorrow. It's a busy working day tomorrow, as the staff always has got in the morning. But I am pre-warned about this one, so we'll see, and we'll play it by ear. And, it's always a pretty good fallback and gives us plenty of latitude to work Paula's final segment into it. I encourage the rest of you, think about doing the same if you are working on a piece of similar magnitude. Let's see, what other things can we squeeze in before handing things over to the after show guys who they can take care of all the things that we didn't get to squeeze in. And I keep forgetting that we have them as backup, even though I say it every day. Well, let's see. There's another story that I want to kind of pocket, no pun intended, we'll keep it for another day. I guess I will go here to Daniel Dale, who was tweeting the other day about Trump's interview with Huckabee, not Sarah, but the former governor who does his own talk show. And there were some interesting exchanges there. The one that really jumped out at me, I mean, they were all very stupid and alarming. But the one I wanted to bring to your attention is one that he has made before. I just thought this one, I really couldn't get over this one this weekend, was that he has reiterated that he's upset about health care not getting taken care of, but that he basically blames the Republican Congress for not getting the job done. And he says again that he really thought that when he got into the Oval Office after being elected, there would be a health care bill on his desk ready for him to sign. And like I said, I can't seem to get over how absurd that is, and how much, I mean, the cynicism, the dirtiness, the stupidity of having campaigned for so long on the premise that I have a beautiful health care plan. It's a secret. I can't tell you. I'm going to deliver such great health care to so many people, and the prices are going to be so low, they're going to love it. And then he got there and he really thought someone else will have done this already. Mind you, he was campaigning even at the time and has of course said since, Republican Congress, they can't deliver, they can't get the job done. They've been saying they're going to repeal and replace for 7 years. I'm finally going to get it done when I get in there. And then what does he do? He actually gets there and says, do it. He turns to the people who he has declared incompetent to the task and says, but I thought you were going to do it. That he couldn't take care of. The Diet Coke button, that got installed right away. He made sure that happened. But the beautiful health care plan that he has, he's got nothing. And he really thought they were going to do it. And it reminded me of the statement that he had made about the Puerto Rico recovery efforts. They want everything done for them. Those people, they want everything done for them. Says the guy who says, where's the health care? I got here and it wasn't on my desk. What happened? Who didn't write it? Whose fault is this? I just really couldn't get over how truly absurd that was. And for the guy to think that he was qualified to be president on top of all that is just like blood boiling to me. I really felt like I wanted to get that one out there. We'll revisit a couple of other rather amazing situations, no doubt, in the days to come. But that one I thought really needed specific mention. Anyway, my gosh, what else have we got to do here? Well, I know one thing we've got to do. We've got to update you on what's coming up next here on Netroots Radio. It is the Red Sky at Morning Tuesday after show. They love to name each of their daily shows, but don't worry about it if you've missed out on that one. It means only one thing, Red Sky at Morning. Tuesdays, one, it's Tuesday, and two, the refraction of light on the horizon portends something is a-brewin', as Justa tells me. What do they got a-brewin' today? The right-wing crusader behind gutting the key provision of the Voting Rights Act has now set his sights on slashing the number of elected minorities across the nation. Gotta get rid of that, right? Virginia police issue an arrest warrant for the 20-year-old black school teacher brutally assaulted by neo-Nazis in Charlottesville back in August for unlawful wounding of his head while fending off a clubbing. Yeah, one of the guys who attacked him, I guess, says, oh, I got punched in the melee. He was defending himself, hit me back. I want him charged. And guess what? It happened. Gee whiz, what does that tell us? And the organizers behind the armed white supremacist protest in Houston last May are revealed to be Russian citizens living in Russia. There's so much more about what's going on in Russia that I'll have to bring you up to date with. Maybe they'll get some of these things too. They'll also be talking with Chris Reeves. They normally visit with Chris Reeves, but he's got a busy schedule now at a Daily Kos staff meeting. That'll keep Joan busy tomorrow. We'll tell you more about what they got after
From
this.
Daily Kos Radio on netrootsradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
Here's what they got. In place of Chris Reeves, they're reporting on a Missouri Republican announcing his Women Belong in the Kitchen platform. Michigan's top medical officer is charged with involuntary manslaughter over the Flint water deaths. Wow. And a new study out of Oxford University reveals Russian propaganda engaged U.S. veterans and troops, too, via social media. Stay tuned.